Hello, welcome to your YouTube channel. My name is Lucas, aka 3 Point Spanish King. And today we've got James Butler, our good friend James Butler, all the way from England to discuss England's horrible Test 3, the third test between Westindies and England, where they capitulated. And James, boy, did they capitulate. Combined runs of 320 altogether, first and second innings, and this was just absolute nightmare for England. What could go wrong did go wrong for England. What are your thoughts of this test match?
I think you summed it up very well. It was it was a disaster as far as England were concerned. Yeah. I mean, the kind of mitigating circumstances, I think they had the better of the first two test matches, but the pitches denied them the ability to go for a victory. But that's kind of, you don't get anything for a draw. You don't get kind of winning points for a draw. And obviously, I mean, first and foremost, well played Westindies. They showed a lot of grit and determination in the first two test matches to make sure they got the draws. And then in the third test match, they took their opportunities. I thought Joshua Da Silva was absolutely excellent. His century and his celebrations were fantastic to see. Craig Brathwaite in the second test match showed a huge amount of grit and determination to bat for 15 hours. Nkrumah Bonner in the first test match the same. So you can't take anything away from Westindies, but it's same old for England. As soon as they're put under any pressure, as soon as they start to lose wickets, they lose more. And they gift, it's been England's story for probably 2, 3, 4 years. You suddenly lose a couple of quick wickets and all of a sudden the session's lost and all of a sudden the test match is in jeopardy. I mean, it's a very strange test match. The first innings for England, 114 for 9, turned into 204 all out. Westindies also, their tail wagged and the last few wickets added the bulk of their score as well. Because it was a strange pitch where the morning session and the afternoon session, it was much harder to bat on than the evening session, it seemed. But there's no excuses. I mean, England were the second best, probably the fifth best team in that two-horse race. And Westindies deserved to win. What more can I say?
Well, amazingly how that sounds, it could have been a lot worse because, as you said, England in their first innings were 9 for 114. And then Jack Leach and I think Mahood, as Jack Leach does, bats, wags a little bit, along with Mahmood. So this could have been a lot far worse, James, than it already is, which probably, doesn't rely on the scoreboard, because they made 240 and you think, 240, that's not, it's way below par, but geez, it could have been a lot worse, and it could have been.
I mean, you say that, but it could also have been a lot better because if in Westindies innings they'd bowled them out towards the end, they could have had quite a convincing first innings lead, but they didn't. And it's all ifs and ands and pots and pans and what might have been, isn't it, in terms of that? And ultimately, England lost and deserved to lose. So you can in a test match. There's always moments, aren't there, where a team takes control, and England had the opportunity to take control and didn't do.
Well, going into the third day where England came out to bat their second innings, I think it was the third day, James.
Yeah.
That was just a complete capitulation, similar to what Australia did to them in the MCG with Scott Boland. Instead, it wasn't Scott Boland, a similar bowler, and pace-wise, it was Kyle Myers. Kept just seaming all over the place. A ball that kept low. I'm not sure who the batsman was. I think that would have been Dan Lawrence. The ball kept low. Poor Dan Lawrence had no chance. And it seems to be a trend now with these, as you call it, or people call it in England, dibbly-dobbly bowlers. These seem to be the type of bowlers that get England into trouble. They're not that good in pace, but their accuracy is off the charts. We saw that with Scott Boland in the Ashes. Now we saw that with Kyle Myers. Is this officially a trend, or is it again one of these freak accidents that happen?
I mean, it's certainly something that there's no excuse for because of any types of bowlers that England should be, or England's batsmen should be very familiar with. It's those kind of bowlers. Yeah. You can understand the team being blown away by rapid pace and having their heads knocked off and wickets tumbled, and you can understand the team being on a turning track, being scuppered by a spinner that's turning it square. But when it comes to England, the one thing that England's very familiar with is that, high 70s kind of bowler, maybe low 80s, who nibbles it around a bit and bowls that consistent line and length. So there's no excuse for England batsmen saying they're not familiar with that kind of surface. You can understand going to India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka and it turning square and them saying, well, we're not used to this is tough. But the Scott Bolans and Carl Myers of this world shouldn't really be posing the threat that they did. I mean, having said that, Carl Myers bowled very well. And as you say, he bowled a consistent line of length, knew exactly what he was doing and bowled very well. So taking nothing away from him. But I do think his figures and Scott Boland's figures are flatter them to a degree because England contributed to their own downfall.
We do actually want to move on to the rebuild, but we will dissect the series. Last show you were on, we actually talked about De Silva, and what a good player he is, and he was absolutely fantastic. In Westindies, first innings, made that brilliant 100, battled with the tail. There were some people saying that, why is he not taking singles, stuff like that. But he makes 100, a debut 100, I believe. And as you said, we were just talking about him last show. And boy, he continued on with that good form, a deserving 100 in my opinion.
Absolutely, he was terrific. And one of the standout memories from that Test match for me. I mean, ultimately, I'm English, but I like to see good cricket. And one of the standout Test moments in that Test match for me was Stokes and Bairstow giving De Silva in the ear all the way through his innings, saying, "You're not batting fast enough. You're boring me," all that kind of stuff. And then when Bairstow was batting, he was basically saying, "You're doing a De Silva, Johnny. You're doing a De Silva. Why aren't you batting faster?" And then almost next ball, Bairstow tries to launch the bowler over mid wicket and gets caught behind. And De Silva effectively took his wicket there, got in his ear, got in his mind, and made him play a stupid shot. So that was quite pleasant. And De Silva's celebrations when he got to his 100, there were tears in his eyes, and that's what Test cricket should mean to people. The battle and the grind and the determination to get to a landmark, and when you get to it, celebrate it. Absolutely fantastic to see that. I did feel though as well that Carl Myers played a huge part in that Test win, and I know De Silva got the man of the match award. I think that was the perfect time to actually split the man of the match award and give it to both of them, because they both had a very big impact. And to say that one was better than the other is he took in about fine margins there. But I'm sure Carl Myers doesn't mind too much. I'm sure he's celebrating his success too.
They usually do give it to the batsmen over the bowlers in those situations more often than not, James. For some reason. So as you said, Westindies came out their second innings. Were you disappointed with the lack of fight in the second innings by England, or was it the spirit was gone? We saw a couple of instances where Chris Woakes, particular, bowling on the pads, hips, short and wide. It's like they just wanted to show mercy and just get over and done with it. Was that a little bit disappointing, or was that expected?
I mean, the spirit should never go, should it? You're playing Test cricket for your country. The spirit should never go. I mean, to be honest, the day 4 I thought was inevitable. The Woakes and Leach dismissals are neither here nor there to me. The match was lost on day 3, and I felt really sorry for Alex Lees, because Alex Lees was really the only one that showed any real fight and determination and discipline, I think, with his batting. And he just, he's trying to make his way as the opener in the side. I think there was definite signs that he was learning on the job going through the series. I mean, it wasn't a great series for him by any means, but definite signs that he was coming to grips with Test cricket, and he's doing that. And while he's doing that, he's got people at the other end giving their wickets away. I mean, Zach Crawley. I mean, what can you say about Zach Crawley? I mean, he scored 2 big hundreds on dead docile tracks. And apart from that, his Test career is awful. And after his 125 in the first Test match, I felt that they bowled too straight at him in the first Test match, and he was whipping it away through mid wicket, driving it straight. He's just shown the world what to do to Zach Crawley, in that you hang it outside of his off stump, you bowl that disciplined line. he might knock you through the covers twice and get a couple of very nice looking boundaries. But if you do it on a consistent basis against Zach Crawley, he's just not got the patience, and he'll end up gifting a chance either behind or to the slip cordon because he just drives on the up. His weight's back, and that's not a test opener for me. And I mean, you can say that probably going through the England team very quickly. Zach Crawley started well and then capitulated. Alex Lees, as I've just said, it hasn't had a glamour series by any means, but I think there were signs there that he's got a little bit of discipline and fight in him. Joe Root, I think the step up to number 3, apart from in the third Test match, worked. Dan Lawrence has had his moments during the series. Ben Stokes' century in the second Test match was excellent. Ben Folkes has got work to do, no doubt about that. Johnny Bairstow, good century in Barbados. So the top 7, some of them have got some positives to take. I hate that expression, but some positives to take. Others, it's the school report is must do better, can do better, must do better. But there's so many loose shots there. And what England don't do, they don't respond to being on the back foot and being put under pressure very well. As soon as a team gets into them and they feel it falling away, there's nobody that in football terms puts their foot on the ball, holds the game and restores the balance. It just disappears from England very quickly. And that's the disappointing thing. And it's not just this test match. If this was one test match in isolation, you could think, yeah, okay, it was just a bad day at the office. But there's been so many bad days at the office for England over the last few years that when a game starts to slip, it slips away so quickly. And that, I don't know what the answer is because it's just really poor. It's so poor.
I actually want to get into your personal player ratings, but what's the reaction back at home by the media to this loss? Now, I think it's something like 17 games and they've only won once. And that was against, I think, India. Was it against India? Yeah. I'll tell you what, James, I can't speak of English media and people, but if that was Australia, if they won only one game from 17 matches, there'd be an absolute riot in the street, calling for heads to be sacked, captains to be dropped, players to be dropped. What has been the reaction from this loss?
Mixed, I think is fair. I think there's a lot of people out there with gunning for Joe Root. A lot of people out there suddenly saying everybody's rubbish and everything's a disaster and everything's horrible. I mean, you don't get to play Test cricket if you're rubbish. It's just a ridiculous argument. You've got to back your argument with something up a little bit more than that. But I think my take on it, as I've seen a few other people's take on it, is that if you call for heads and you call for him to be sacked and him to be dropped, you're effectively just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, because what the problem is with English cricket at the moment goes a lot deeper than the players in Barbados in the third Test match. I mean, I've just tweeted. I'll read you this tweet out. I tweeted a picture of the points table for the World Test Championship, with England rock bottom at the moment, and I've just put English cricket is in a mess. Racism. Yeah, there's a scandal with racism in English cricket. Priorities all wrong. Big bonuses to the people that led it here. We've got Tom Harrison taking his big bonus and probably going to be clearing off quite soon. Prioritising a format nobody else plays in the 100. Marginalising red ball county cricket. So, I mean, and what they do at the moment with the fixture list, it seems to me, is they stick the 100 in the glamour summer months. They put the other white ball tournaments around the 100, and then they fit red ball cricket into the gaps. And if you treat red ball cricket like that, and red ball county championship cricket is something that I think a lot of English fans are very proud of. 18 counties, long history. We've had the likes of Justin Langer coming over and playing for Somerset in his time, saying it's the strongest domestic red ball competition he's ever played in, and he loved playing for Somerset and Middlesex. But that's being eroded at the moment because it's being shoved to the margins in months that you wouldn't even call summer in England, and there's a massive problem here. And the county championship is the foundation where players learn their craft. They learn how to bat long. They learn how to bowl. The pitches potentially aren't good enough. And you take the cream of that crop to play for England. And at the moment, they're not good enough. Anybody suggesting that the England team are producing world-class players at the moment. Really, there's only Joe Root, I think, in that current setup, because Ben Stokes, he's hit and miss. I don't think you can necessarily even call him world-class at the moment. There's only Joe Root in that side who is consistently scoring runs. Got the ICC Cricketer of the Year last year in the midst of an absolute rabble. Without some of Root's runs, the record you've just read out would be even worse. So, if it can be worse. So, there's a big problem in English cricket, and it's not necessarily the personnel. It's not necessarily the players' fault. The players have to take responsibility for the shots they play. Of course they do. But until England actually takes red ball seriously again, and there is some kind of reset, reboot, rejig, whatever you'd call it, that's similarly to what happened after the 2015 World Cup when England was shocking and changed things around in white ball and then ended up being world beaters. They've got to have. I'm not suggesting that red ball suddenly becomes the priority again. Red ball, white ball can work together.
But should it?
Red ball and white ball can work together. You can prioritize both. You don't need to just prioritize one. You can prioritize both. We see New Zealand good in all formats. We see India good in all formats. Australia good in all formats. Why can't England be good in all formats? But you need to have the foundation in the county system that actually promotes both red and white ball. And at the moment, it just really promotes white ball.
Well, we will go back to the series between West Indies and England, and we want to go through your ratings. We did this in the Ashes. Some saying I was very harsh on Joe Root and very easy on David Warner. So we'll start at the top. We'll just go through these because I think there's a bigger picture that needs to be spoken, which is the reset, the rebuild. If England are doing that correctly, so we'll start with your man Alex Lee. Sorry, out of 10.
I think Leesy's come in. I think he's put. The criticism of Alex Lees that he batted too slowly. I'm not necessarily bothered about that. Really, England needs somebody to actually show some solidity and some concentration and some discipline. I think he did miss out on a few scoring shots here and there. I don't think he was in prime form. I've seen him bat better. He can bat faster. I think he put a few shots away to try and give himself the best chance, which is sensible. I think there were signs that he learned. He got done over by Kemar Roach in the first Test match. He was very good at bowling at left-handers, and he came back. He came back better off the back of that. As I said before, it wasn't vintage from Lees. It's not a series he's going to basically be able to write an autobiography on or anything like that. But I think there were signs that he's got something and has got a decent technique. So I think if you're marking me out of 10. Probably a 4, and definitely deserves more chances down the line.
Yeah. Okay. The next one you've just smashed just recently 5 minutes ago. Is that Crawley?
There's no doubt he's got something about him. There's no doubt he's got the potential to be a Test player, but he's got to get his head right. You know, you can't just go out there and flash big booming drives outside of off stump and expect to be successful in Test cricket. You got to pick your shots. You got to pick what to attack and wait for the bad ball and have a solid defence and leave alone outside of the off stump. A batsman in Test cricket, the leave alone shot's probably the most important shot they have at the top of the order when the ball's doing a little bit. So, his century, fine, good innings, but you look at his Test career. He got the big 267 or whatever it was against Pakistan. He got the 125 in the first Test match against West Indies. Around the rest of that, he's got 250s and a sea of disasters. So, how do you score somebody like that? I mean, you've got to give him a couple of points for his 100, but apart from that, I'm not giving him any more.
Next, Joe Root, which I think the cricket world, really feels sorry for Joe Root because he's in a no-win situation. He's in a, I don't think Joe Root's a very bad captain. I don't think he's a good captain, but I think the players he's got around him are not good enough to help his captaincy to help him make him become a better captain. Yeah. So what were your thoughts of Joe Root this series? Not just batting back captaincy as well.
I did a tweet yesterday, which has gone a little bit bonkers. I put Joe Root is not an atrocious captain. He's probably about an average captain. If you're
I saw that. Yes.
If you're an average skipper with great players, you look a great captain. Yeah. An average captain of a poor side looks poor. Joey's in the latter category. He's an average captain of a poor side. And if that's his last test as captain, he should be thanked and not pilloried. There's a lot of people with, as I said, with their guns out for Joe Root, trying to suggest that he should be sacked on the spot. It's not as simple as that in English cricket. As I say, it's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Whether another captain might do better than Joe Root is very much open to debate. I doubt it somehow. You might get a new captain bounce and a bit of positivity in the dressing room. I do actually think Joe Root should go now, because I think purely from his own personal point of view, I think he's probably taken it as far as he can, and he deserves an easier ride in life than basically series after series of answering questions on about how he can improve it. And there's no signs of him necessarily individually improving stuff. I love Joe Root. I've known him since he was a teenager, and he's a terrific lad, and he's a terrific player. Whether he can actually add anything more as a captain to this England side, I'm not so sure. It might be time for him to move on. But purely on the score side of things, 2 terrific centuries on flat tracks, it has to be said. His captaincy must probably take a couple of marks off it. But you can only really work with the tools you're given as a captain. I'd give him a 6.
Just on Joe Root, he said it in his press conference or an interview that he actually wants to go again. No, this is what he said. No doubt about that. Do you believe that, or is he just his ego's taking over? Does he want to captain, or is it his ego telling him, "No, we just ignore it. We'll just keep going"?
I've backed Rooty as captain since he started. And it's the first time I'm actually thinking this is time for him to go. I know what he's like as a human being. He's cricket crazy. He loves the game. He will be thinking of nothing else and he'll have a massive determination to try and make it right. But I think there's definitely signs, certainly in the third test match, that he looks frazzled. He looks like he's maybe run his race. And I think somebody actually needs to sit down with Rooty. I mean, there's going to be a change in personnel at the top deck, new director of cricket coming in and a new head coach coming in. When they get their feet under the table, they need to sit down with Root and actually have a proper, candid, honest chat with him about, can you actually add any more to this side? And there comes a time, Lucas, as well, where when you're standing there after an absolute disaster, which that third test match was for England, that third day was the worst day I can remember for a long time. And there's been a few. And to stand there and say he can start to see the positives coming out of the series, that and all that kind of stuff, it starts to wear a bit thin. I prefer him actually just to stand there and say it's just not good enough. We need to be better.
But has he got the ego to say that? We know that he's real liked within the team. Is it too much of his best mates of everybody? He doesn't really want to push them over the edge.
I hear that a lot, that he's too nice. I don't think you can, as a human being, you can't be too nice. It's a ridiculous thing to say. Going on what's going on in the world at the moment, we need a hell of a lot more niceness in the world and nice people. And so I think that's a ridiculous criticism of a captain. You get different types of leader. You get somebody that's more human and nice and friendly to people and gets the dressing room singing on their kind of song. You get people who are a little bit more Sergeant Majory and a bit more critical. And sometimes when you got somebody in of that ilk, when they pat you on the back, it actually feels better because it feels like it means something. So you get different types of leaders, and you can have nice leaders. There's no issue with that at all. But I just think he's captain England more than anybody else. You read out the stats of 1 win in 17, which is is shocking. And I think it's possibly time to look for somebody different. I wouldn't necessarily lose sleep if they carried on with Rooty, because I don't think particularly the captain's going to make the difference.
We'll get into that a little bit later, James.
But I just think from his personal point of view, it actually might just do him good not to be in the firing line anymore.
Yep. So Dan, well, actually, there was a little bit of backlash during the press conference, like the ceremonies, where Ian Bishop, I think it was Ian Bishop, who's doing the ceremonies, match review press conference, trophy celebration presentation. Sorry, where he called for Joe Root and
spit it out, man, spit it out.
I'm overjoyed with Joey winning in Asia for the first time since 2005, James.
Yes, congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Well, oof, I was on the edge of my seat when Azam started to attack Stark. But anyway, that's another different matter. Joe Root did not appear when he was called for. Was there absolutely anything into that, or was he depressed? Was he sad? Why was he not there at that time? Which was a bit strange.
I didn't know that because I was on commentary yesterday, so I don't get the necessarily the TV coverage, and I'm not actually picked up on that from Twitter either. So I don't know, and I don't know the answer. Okay, so
he asked Joe Root to give some words. Joe Root was not there. Went away for 5 minutes, then went to Carlos Brathwaite. Joe Root eventually did come. Ian Bishop didn't ask, which I thought was pretty good on his behalf. We don't need to know, but I just thought that a little bit interesting. And Joe Root, didn't really get kind supporters on Twitter from that moment. But you didn't see it, so we won't go on with that. We'll go back into the ratings. Dan Lawrence, another one that they've gone to rebuild mode, but hasn't really worked out, has it, James?
I think he's had a decent series. He's had a couple of good knocks. He's come in and he's been a little bit more aggressive on when the chance arose. I think he's certainly once died for the cause in terms of trying to score quickly to set up a declaration. So there's nothing wrong with that in terms of playing for the team. And I said on my podcast last night, he got criticised a bit yesterday, and rightly so, for leaving one that hit his off stump. But actually, from a young player's point of view, somebody learning the ropes in Test cricket, it's a step up. I prefer to see somebody, as long as it's not a regular occurrence, I prefer to see somebody dismissed like that, trying to leave a ball, than to see somebody do what Zach Crawley does and chasing a ball that's 10 foot outside of his off stump. You know, if you're trying to get somebody to be, if you're trying to get somebody to show judgment and know where their off stump is and to leave balls and to be hard to get out. Obviously, it doesn't look good when you shoulder arms and it hits your off stump. But I prefer
the best, James.
I prefer to see somebody get out that way than somebody get out trying to flash a cover drive when it's not necessary. So I think Dan's had a decent enough series. He could do better, of course he could. But he could have been a lot worse as well. So I'd give him a fairly solid and promising 5.
Now this one's, you probably would be controversial with this one. Controversy. Ben Stokes can look like an absolute world beater on his day. We do count his bowling as well in this rating. Can look like a world beater one day and look dreadful the next. We've seen this in this series as well. You know, good in that I think it was the second test where he made that 100, and awful in this test match.
I actually think he's been better in this series with the ball than with the bat. I think when he's had the ball, he's looked, especially on the 2 dull tracks in the first 2 test matches, he probably looked the most likely to take a wicket for England. And he always provides you with that little bit of spark or something when he takes the ball. I think Joe Root gets criticised for bowling him too much, but I think it's actually quite difficult to take the ball off him when he's in a spell. The innings that you mentioned, the century was excellent. But some of the shots he's played around that century, it's kind of almost going back to kind of Zach Crawley comments. The pull in the first innings of the 3rd test match that dropped back in the bowler's hands. Sometimes it's shot selection, I think, with Ben Stokes. People suggesting he should be captain. I don't want that. But the score for Ben, probably around about 5 again as well. A middling kind of series for him.
Johnny Bairstow.
I think Johnny's been good, actually. I think he finished the Ashes with a century. Got a century in the warm-up game ahead of the Westindies. Got a century then in the first test match. he looks solid. Mentioned earlier, Josh De Silva kind of got in his head, and I
Yeah,
think he played a rash shot because of that, and he shouldn't be doing that with the amount of experience that he's got. But I think he's had a decent enough series, to be honest, and I think there's definite signs that if you give Johnny that number 6 spot and actually don't give him the gloves and you back him to score runs at number 6, there's going to be some good innings there in the future. So I think I'd give him a 6 from this series.
Okay, Chris Rokes. A lot of debate. Ben Foakes. Oh, sorry, that's what I meant. Sorry about that. Yeah. Ben Foakes, because I was gonna say a lot of controversy about him also. Whether should they stay with Josh Butler or that. So sorry about that, Ben Foakes. I did get your name wrong.
There's too many Stokes, Foakes, and Wokes, isn't there?
Yeah.
The Foakes thing. I mean, I've been.
Where do you sit on that? Do you prefer a keeper that can bat but stinks up the joint wicket keeping, or a good wicket keeper that can just bat a little bit? What do you, in an ideal world?
I would edge towards the good keeper. I think he's the best keeper England's have.
Yeah,
and he can bat. You know, it's not like he's an absolute muppet with the bat. He's averaging. He averages in first class cricket more than Josh Butler averages in first class cricket. So he's a good player. I don't think he's had the best of series, has to be said. And for somebody like me who's been calling for him to be included for probably a couple of years now, he's not necessarily rewarded us for our kind of putting him forward. But I think that there are, Westindies is a tough place to go to keep, especially when you get dull tracks there with uneven bounce. That's probably the worst thing for a keeper is uneven bounce, because you're taking some around your chest region, and the next one bounces twice. Where are you going with that? Some of England's bowling as well was, lines were terrible. We'll come on to that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah.
But so I think, could have done a bit better. But there are equally examples of Ben Foakes where he takes balls that others don't get to, and I think people throw at you the fact that he's made some drops and test match wicket keeping stats, etc. Wicket keeping stats are ridiculous, because if you can fly like Superman and get your fingertips to a ball, it goes down as a drop. If you don't get within 2 meters of that same ball, it goes down as not a drop. So the better keepers that get to the ball end up getting penalised for getting the fingertips to it. And there's no kind of like tariff in the dismissals. So like a straightforward edge that comes through to stomach level and is an easy pouch goes down as the same kind of chance as one that you take as Superman diving to your right in front of second slip almost. So I think wicketkeeper stats are very misleading. I think the thing that's maybe disappointed me most with Foakes on this trip isn't his keeping, it's his batting. And I think he's better than he's shown as a batsman in this series. And purely on the basis of that, judging him as an all-rounder, I'd probably give him a 3. Because I think there's a lot more from Ben Stokes. And when we come to the English summer, he's in the team for me. You've got to persevere with him. After waiting this long, you've got to give him a run in the side.
Now we can go into Chris Rokes. Another one, I won't say controversial, I'll just say debate whether he should not leave the tarmac in England, as you've quoted, should stay in England unless the only reason he should go to England is if he's holidaying, but not playing cricket. What have you thought in his series?
Yeah, take his passport off him immediately. I mean, he picks up 3 wickets in the third test, but I think some of the dismissals Westindies helped. We'll come on to Craig Overton in a second, but I just don't see Wokes as being an overseas player. End of story. He's batting and he's bowling. I mean, he's batted at times decently in this series. But that's ultimately not what he's paid for.
And he's not there as an all-rounder. So
he's bowling with a new ball. I think pretty much every single time in the third test match was awful. 2 wide of the off stump, then tried to rejig it and went down the leg side. And one of the things you don't get with Chris Wokes at home, he's consistent. It just wasn't any consistency from Wokes in this series. I'd give him a 2, and that's for his batting.
You've said it yourself. Craig Overton was involved in a little bit of an ugly incident with De Silva yesterday. Mind you, Da Silva handled that very well. Other batsmen, James, might not have handled that very well.
I don't rate Craig Overton. He burns up the county championship. He takes wickets for fun for Somerset, but it doesn't translate to Test cricket. Certainly on tracks like we've seen in the Westindies, he looked ridiculously ordinary. And the wickets he took in the series, if you actually go through and analyse them, there was a lot of poor shots from Westindies. The short ball lofted up to fine leg, the short ball outside of leg stump, feathering the glove and being caught down leg side. Yes, of course, they're all wickets, and you can't take away the fact that he's taken them. But there weren't, I can't think of a single one where he's actually undone the batsman with a ball that's done something and taken him LBW, or a bona fide caught behind, or an LBW where he's actually got the ball to beat the bat. I'd give him naught. I just don't see anything there.
Just with that incident with Da Silva, it seems to me that Craig Overton's got away with it. Let's take Overton's name out of this. If a bowler threw a ball at a batsman like that and the batsman reacted, would the bowler be in more trouble than if the batsman didn't react, like Da Silva did, which he didn't react? But if Da Silva would have reacted, throwing his bat, Craig Overton probably would have got in trouble.
I've got nothing against the bowler trying to throw down the stumps.
Yeah. If you stay on that, James. If we think about it, so I think what led up to that was a review by Westindies, and they walked off, which was comical. Because everyone thought they hit it out. The umpires did. They had an awful series. The umpires, absolutely awful. I don't know if you agree on that. Just on quickly, James. Okay, so they all
umpires get 1 out of
10. Yeah. That's kind, James. Very kind. They all went up. Yeah, they all went off. And then he didn't actually hit it. Came back on, and then Overton kind of lost his marbles there. So I get the frustration. But like I said, if that was another batsman who reacted differently, this could have been a different story for him.
I don't know Craig personally. But what I understand from him on the county scene, he's got a little bit of a short fuse at times.
Okay.
And it's something he's trying to manage, I think, in terms of how he deals with his game. Sometimes that can help somebody, can't it? It fires you up and gets you going.
Yeah. Mitchell Stark does that a few times as well. He throws the ball back at the
bowler. Stark, because he's one of the mildest mannered creatures you can get. I love Mitchell Stark.
I'm glad someone on this show does.
So I, having that kind of beast within kind of thing can help you at times, but it can also be your undoing.
No.
But I don't want to pick on the lad. Yeah. He's trying his best, but I just don't see anything. I don't see anything there.
Okay, we'll move on from that. Another debate. Seems that every time I mention these players, they've got the word debatable on there. Jack Leach. Now, you said last Test match that you wanted to see Matt Parkinson, I think the other leg spinner, in this team, because it was ridiculous how he was getting vacation time all around the world, not getting matches. Didn't get Matt Parkinson. They've kept with Jack Leach. How did you see this game? We know what he did with the bat in the second innings. That's great, but he's not, as you said, he's not there to be paid to do that with the bat. He's paid with the ball.
I stand by what I said after the second test with Jack Leach. I think he's a decent decent slow left armour. He's never going to do England down if they play him. Is he good enough to really force it when the conditions aren't 100% in his favour? Possibly not. I think he even said himself after the second test match or maybe the first test match, that he was a bit down on himself because he thought he could have had more of a part to play on day 5. But as I said before, you look through his record, he's taken his fifers and his forfers on turning tracks in the subcontinent, where a lot of spin bowlers would fancy their chances. So it's you judge a player when the conditions aren't necessarily in their favour. How do they cope with that? Pat Cummins is a great example in Pakistan in that Test match against Pakistan. He finds a way, doesn't he, of getting a wicket somehow. Jack Leach is nowhere near in the same class as Pat Cummins in terms of his bowling. So, but I like him, and he's got fight within him, and he's got something about him. Jack Leach.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
but I don't think he's necessarily the long-term answer for England, and it's not for want of trying. It's not for want of, but his variations aren't enough. His change of pace isn't enough, and I do think he got a little bit fortunate in the West Indies. He topped the wicket-taking stakes, so he's obviously done something right. But he did have a series where the West Indies batsman didn't try and hit him. I don't think I saw a single time where anybody tried to take him down and launch him over the top, particularly, and really go for him on a consistent basis. And Brathwaite maybe hit him for a 6 in the first Test match from memory, but that was the only time. And Brathwaite soon went back into his shell. So generally speaking, the batsmen have been content to pat him back in this series, which obviously makes you look great. Your economy stats are fantastic. But we've seen when in previous tours where Australia have had a go at him and Rishabh Pant's had a go at him, that he can be taken down if the mood is there for the batsman. So I really like Jack Leach, and I really like him as a decent bowler, but I don't think he's a great bowler, and I don't think he'll ever be a great bowler. So it sounds like I'm kind of picking on your favourite cuddly toy or something, because everybody loves him.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But it's cult
figure.
So I think he gets a very solid 6.
Are people still? Yeah, go on, James.
Because his bowling's been all right, but I don't think it's been too much more than all right.
Are people still growing on him because what he did in the Ashes? Even though it seems like an eternity now. That innings, an absolute eternity. But
there is an element, I think, of people loved Jack Leach because he became a bit of a cult hero with that one not out.
Cult figure. Yeah.
He also got that 92 against Ireland at Lords, where he was a night watchman. And his batting's good. He's got a good technique against batting, and he's certainly brave. He gets in line and he does the right stuff. And I love Jack Leach. As a human being, he comes across as a really nice guy. I'm not knocking him. I don't think he's a bad bowler at all. He's a decent Test bowler. And
I think you can have your
And there's a lot of people in the world that would love to be a decent Test bowler. But if you're going away from the love of him and the admiration of him and the fact that he is a decent Test bowler and he gets some useful runs at times, is he ever going to be a magnificent Test bowler? Possibly not. Is he ever going to be as good as Graham Swan or whatever? I mean, comparisons are always not helpful, but no is the answer. So he gets a very solid 6. It's been a good tour for Jack Leach, but it's not been a great tour for Jack Leach, I don't think.
I think your opinion is your opinion. So, if that's what you believe, then you have your right to say that. I don't think people should criticise you for that. That's my opinion.
Where would you? How many marks would you give him?
Jack Leach, this series, I would say a 5. I don't think he was terrible, but I don't think he was good. So basically, what you just said. He's not a brilliant bowler. But he's not a bad bowler. He's just average.
So I've given him a 6.
Yeah, that's what I probably would have gave him. The last one, Matt. Well, we won't actually do match for sure. He only played one Test. You made that review on the second show about his performance. So it's very hard to give him a rating.
Did nothing particularly wrong, Matty Fisher. I think there's more to come from him.
Yep.
Got a very nice action, and I think in English conditions, I think he's going to be quite useful.
Okay, right. We can. That's the end of the player ratings. We can go into the worst. Oh, sorry. Saqib Mahmood did play this tour. Sorry, Saki.
Sak is somebody I think has had a good tour. I think he's come in for the second and third Test matches. I think he should have played in the Ashes. I think he would have made a difference for England in the Ashes. His bowling record now in Test cricket after 2 Test matches is pretty decent. And he's got a little bit about him. And I think the more Tests you play, the more he'll have about him because he'll learn on the job. He's a bright lad, and obviously nearly gets a 50 as well. 49, his highest ever score in the third Test match. So I think he can take he can sit on the plane coming home with a nice warm fuzzy feeling. So I think he's done himself proud, and I think I'd give him a 7. You know, he obviously hasn't won a Test match for England. He hasn't done anything dramatically amazing, but I think a lot of positive signs for Saqib Mahmood and a bright future for him.
Yeah, I think that's a positive rating. As you said, didn't do too much special, but he didn't do a lot wrong either. Right. So I think that's a good.
He's got rating. He's got something about him where on tracks that maybe don't help other people, he can maybe still get some, you know, in the same way we've just been talking about Pat Cummins making something happen when it's not necessarily in your favour. I think Saqib's got that potential for England to do something, take a wicket when nobody else can, potentially.
The other bowlers that we didn't mention, Ollie Robinson, he only played one Test, I think, and Mark Wood. I think they only played once. Yeah,
Ollie didn't play at all, did he?
Okay, yep. And Mark Wood played one. We can't review that.
Next time England want to go to the Caribbean and take somebody that's unfit, I'm happy to go.
Absolutely. I'm if any Australian players, I'm on standby if our bowlers go down. Right, so that's the end of the ratings. Now the bigger picture for England. What is their biggest problem? We know their biggest problem. We've done this show deaf about their problems, but what do they need to get first right? The coaching or the captaincy?
The domestic structure.
Okay.
I don't care who's coaching.
So the bigger picture. So the bigger picture is the domestic season.
At the moment, in my opinion, you could have pretty much any coach, any captain, and you're still going to get days like the third day, because at the moment the domestic structure, the way people learn their game and basically learn their craft, their apprenticeship is in county cricket. Their apprenticeship for Test cricket, and at the moment that's not doing them any favours. We need better pitches. We need more consistent cricket throughout the entire summer, and we need each game to mean a bit more as well. I've seen a few people. I subscribe to the 3x6 divisions, where you play 10 games in a season. They're spread out a little bit more through the season. I know I've spoken to when Jason Gillespie was with the Yorkshire, I used to talk to him about this, and he said that the one thing about English cricket is you don't get time to prepare for the next game, because the next game's on you before you've even finished the previous one sometimes, and the only time off between the games is to kind of travel to the next venue, and then have a quick net, and then you're on the pitch again. So if whereas in the Sheffield Shield, you might get a week off between games where you can think, well, that team's got Shane Warne playing, so I need to practice against leg spin or whatever. You don't really get the chance to really properly analyse your own faults and your own game, and look at what the other team's going to be, the threat they're going to be providing you, and you're effectively walking out there to bat or bowl with having not had time to do your homework at times, I think, in English county cricket. So spreading the games. I know a lot of fans don't want to see less county cricket, and I don't particularly, but I think if it actually has the knock-on effect of making each game matter, and makes, by virtue of that, makes players take each game, even if it's just 1% more seriously, I think that's a good thing for English county cricket than the red ball game, and it maintains the 18 counties. It gives them all a place and a part in the structure. And if you do well as a county, you can go up the divisions and you can be in Division 1 and you can win the title. No problem with that at all. If you win Division 2, you get a plate. If you win Division 3, you get a plate. There's no issue there either. So it gives counties a chance to go for something a little bit more. But to me, it is the lack of priority of red ball cricket in the domestic structure that is the issue, and the underlying current underneath all of this. And you can have anybody captaining that England side, you can have anybody coaching that England side. They might have make a marginal difference here and there, but unless you get the structure right and you get the foundations of the game right, it's a little bit like a Jenga puzzle. Those Jenga towers you get, and for years in English cricket, we've been pulling a bit out, a block out of red ball cricket here. We've been pulling a block out of red ball cricket there. Then we take one out and it's shook a little bit. We've taken another one out and it's shaken a little bit. It's not going to be long before we take another block out of it and the tower collapses.
I'm glad you mentioned that because one of our friends on this show, Michael Wagner, you might have heard of him. He does our New Zealand games. He was actually playing that game a couple of weeks ago. So very nice he brought that up. But however, James, I wouldn't recommend using the Sheffield Shield as inspiration because our Sheffield Shield is disgraceful how it's been treated. It only gets swept under the carpet because Australia actually win.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace.
I definitely think there's things wrong with the Sheffield Shield as well. Don't get me wrong. I think having fewer games and more time to prepare is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Oh, they get that right. I just think, as you said, priority. I don't like the Sheffield Shield being broken up by the Big Bash. Which is the problem with the county cricket now, the 100. Now I understand the Big Bash is a bigger tournament than the 100, but you're still breaking up the premier tournament of your country. Domestic cricket is the red ball game. So England, county, Australia, Sheffield Shield, India, Ranji.
You see, I don't necessarily agree with that because I think you can give both of them priority. Yeah, there's a room for everybody in cricket, and a lot of people just like white ball cricket. White ball thrills people, and the 3 hours of T20 gets people on the edge, or 4 hours or 5 hours as it is sometimes, gets people on the edge of their seats, and there's room for that. There's room to excite people and bring people in just for white ball. So I've not got an issue with giving white ball tournaments priority too, but it's at the expense of, at the moment in English cricket, it's at the expense of red ball.
That's
cricket.
The word I'm trying to say. Yeah, expense of red ball cricket. Yeah,
where it should be, we prioritise red ball cricket and we prioritise white ball cricket, and we look for success in both.
Okay, so now the bigger picture with this reset rebuild. Now, I'm glad they actually played Westindies because Westindies were a perfect example of this. They went to Bangladesh a year ago. They sacked their captain. Jason Holder wasn't there. They made 5 debutantes. The Keena Bona, Kyle Myers, Jaden Seals. There was a spinner. Who's the big spinner guy? I forgot his name. Cornwell. So that going to Bangladesh, they completely got rid of their team. They got rid of Shai Hope. So they got rid of Shai Hope.
You can't talk and read at the same time, can you?
No, I can't. Thank you for that. So we will speed this up. So they got rid of half their players, including their captain. But if you go to England's reset, they've only replaced 3 batsmen with old recycled players. Now they've done well with Alex Les, but if you look at the West Indies rebuild, they've gone completely different direction and gave recycled players like Ben Foakes. Now I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he is a recycled player. He had his shot. He got dumped for Josh Butler. Now he's came back. Dom Sibley, Ollie Pope, Crawley's even been dropped. How can you compare this rebuild to a West Indies rebuild who did the clean reset, got rid of half their players, sacked their captain? Jason Holder still plays Test cricket, but Brathwaite is their captain. So what do you say on that regard? Have they done this rebuild wrong compared to the West Indies?
First of all, Lucas, I wouldn't necessarily, despite the fact that I'll give them a massive pat on the back for how they played in the 3 Test series, and there is definite, there's definite improvement from the West Indies, I think, in this series. I don't think they're necessarily going to be held. I'd want to see West Indies over a bit of a sustained period because I don't think they're the finished article by any means.
No, of course not. No,
there's a lot of room for them to improve as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the one thing with England, which I think people, you can make cases for James Vince to come back into the side. You can make a case for a Sibley potentially to come back into the side. Hamid, some of the younger players that are having success around the county.
So keep that. Sorry to break you, but isn't that the problem? They call it a rebuild, but you're bringing in recycled players that have failed in the past.
And there's new players out there that you could look at too. No doubt about that. Yeah. But I think, genuinely speaking, take Broad and Anderson out of the equation when I say this. England's squad to go to the West Indies was, if you got 10 people to sit down and pick a squad, probably the nucleus of that England team would have been the same. I wouldn't have taken Wokes. I wouldn't have taken Overton. But I would have.
But isn't that more direction on the selection then?
So, but what I'm saying is that the nucleus of England's team
Yeah.
is probably the best players available.
Okay.
They're just not good enough.
Well, is England cricket afraid of change? Let's say that, you know, we saw what West Indies did in Bangladesh, half the squad, because I think they had an ODI series, to be fair, and most of their players thought, well, that's a better series. So they had no choice but to bring in young test players. But wouldn't it be more beneficial to say, all right, of course we want to win in West Indies, but let's bring in players like Tom Abel, Will Rhodes from Warwickshire. Ever since Kyle Myers done his 5 wickets bowling at 70 miles, all I hear is Darren Stevens, League Fletcher.
I'd love Steve-O, but he's not a test player.
But do they bring in players like Tom Abel, Will Rhodes, Kieran Carlson?
I think, I mean, just to kind of go back or go forward a step or whatever.
Go ahead.
When you're talking about Joe Root's captaincy, if Joe Root was to resign or get sacked or whatever, you look about who would replace him. And usually, I can't think, other than when Chris Cowdery got the England job back in the 80s when they tried 4 English captains against West Indies because West Indies were knocking everybody else's heads off. Usually in most countries, when a captain vacates somewhere, however, there is an obvious successor or 2 or 3 potential obvious successors, and then it's a case of the chairman selectors or whoever makes the decision to decide which one's the best one and which one they're going to go for. At the moment with England, there is no obvious successor. There is only, if you actually looked at the 11, and again, take out Broad and Anderson out of this, there is only really Joe Root and Ben Stokes who you can actually pretty much, if everybody stays fit, you can pretty much guarantee would be playing Test cricket in a year's time, because all of the rest of them are under fire and have something to prove to stay in the side. And that, you know, having 90% or whatever it is of your side not actually nailed down in terms of that shows you how weak England are. And now when you start to talk about potential successors to Joe Root, you can go one of 2 ways. You either go within the squad, and if you're doing that, you've got to pick somebody that's going to be in the team. So it's Ben Stokes or nobody really at the moment. Jimmy Anderson maybe. I wouldn't want to see Ben Stokes get it. I really like him as a cricketer. I think he's maturing as an individual, but he's still a bit hot-headed. He's had a year out of the game with, partially for mental health illnesses, and the England Test captaincy is one of the most pressurised jobs you get in sport. So I don't think that necessarily gels particularly healthily. And I don't want to see him suffer. And he's also got a hell of a lot on his plate. You know, he does. And the danger with Ben Stokes is if he was captain and it was going wrong, he'd bowl 30 over spells. So, you know, I think he's a brilliant vice captain. I think he's perfect in that vice captain's job. To support somebody else. So for me, I'd go outside. And you mentioned 2 of the candidates there, Tom Abel, Will Rhodes. I was going to say, do you bring in a domestic captain? Now, Australia, we're going to do this with Travis Head, because Tim Payne, they weren't really keen on Tim Payne captaining. Mind you, Tim Payne did a good job off the field. Forget about his personal thing. But there was a debate whether, you know, should they just go for broke and go for the domestic captain? Travis Head was heavily linked. Do they go down that road? Do they bring a Tom Abel or Will Rhodes or someone from the domestic county? There's advantages and disadvantages with that, but it's the way I'd go. I think the Will Rhodes, Tom Abels, James Vince even, who's captain of Hampshire, who would probably have the strongest claim.
Steve Milani from Nottinghamshire.
I don't think Steve Mulaney's a Test player personally. But because I think with the Abels and Rhodes of this world,
they are young.
They have been mentioned in dispatches in terms of potential Test players anyway. So you're effectively giving them that step up, but saddling them with the captaincy as well. So you've got these situations. Say you took James Vince, who's obviously been in the Test team before. He averaged 24 or something like that, but he looks $1 million when he's in form. I think he's a better player and he's a more mature individual now than he was. He's had success in the white ball England team. He's got a century in an ODI, which surely gives him some more confidence that feels he, to make him feel like he belongs at international level. And if you bring in him, if you bring in somebody from outside, whether it's Vince or Abel or Rhodes, you're asking them to do two things, aren't you? You're asking them to take on the captaincy and make an impact, and you're asking them to show they were a test player at the same time. That's quite a big ask.
But in fairness to Travis Head, when they were going to go with him, Travis had already played games with Australia.
Travis Head's he's more of your James Vince kind of scenario, isn't he?
Yeah.
So which is why I think James Vince he already knows what Test cricket's about.
Yeah.
And he already knows what you need to do in Test cricket to succeed.
Well, who would you go out of those three players, Abel, Vince, or Rhodes?
I'd go with Vince.
Okay.
Because I think Vince is, like I say, he's already been there, seen it, done it, and knows what you need to do. I mean, I don't know how he hasn't played more, because yes, he flashed outside of stump, got caught and gave it away at times, but there was signs that he was learning, and every time he's taken a step up in his life, he's taken a bit of time to get used to it, and then when he's cracked it, he's been great. There were just signs he was starting to crack it. He'd scored runs against Australia, and I think his final score was 78 or something like that. And they told him to go back to county cricket and get hundreds and show that he was in form ahead of the season. He went back and I think scored 300s early on in that season. They didn't pick him, and he hasn't been seen since in the Test team. There is so I've gone through the disadvantages of taking somebody from outside. The advantage of taking somebody from outside is that they are not necessarily fearing being dropped. Because you're obviously if you're appointing somebody as a Test captain, you're giving them at least a year inside, aren't you? So if you're appointing James Vince, he doesn't have the axe hanging over his head like he has done in every Test he's played. So you're effectively taking that pressure off him to a degree. So he's able to come in as a batsman, thinking, well, I can bat here without being dropped if I get out, which is a massive thing in a Test match.
Oh yeah, absolutely, pressure.
So I think there's definite advantages there of bringing somebody in from outside and giving them, you've just got to basically say to the public, this is the reboot. This is our you've got to talk to the captain, say what type of team do you want? Give him the players that he thinks he needs. You've got to trust him to lead it the right way, because you're bringing him in. I mean, Will Rose has just won the championship with Warwickshire, so you can't say he's a bad captain. But you've got to. I think you've got to explain to the cricket watching public that this is not going to be a short-term fix. This is us restocking. This is us giving our trust in a new skipper that we've identified as being a good captain. This is our trust in, so be patient with him as a player as well, potentially. If he doesn't get off to a grandstanding start and score a century in one of his first two innings, don't just start knocking him because he's not good enough. Have some faith in him and get behind him, and let's plan long term. We might lose a series against New Zealand and against Australia. It might not be an instant fix, but we're trying to actually plan for the future and actually, and the structure of English cricket has got to come into that same conversation. You can't do one without the other. But I think there's definite advantages from somebody coming in from outside with fresh ideas that isn't burdened by all of this crap that's gone on with England, with collapses and everything else that's gone on in the past. There is definite advantages of bringing somebody in from inside. Whether they'll be brave enough, I don't know.
Yeah. So we'll start wrapping up this show. England's next Test match, I think, is in June against New Zealand, or do they have that once-off Test match in India before that?
No, that's after the New Zealand.
I think we all know my thoughts on that one. Just one kind of question before you go. Now so the county season, I think teams are doing their warm-up matches.
Yeah.
So it's just around the corner. I think a couple of weeks, isn't it, James?
I think it starts very soon, actually. Bit close.
Yeah. All right. I think it's right at the start of April. Yeah. Let's play devil's advocate here. Okay. Now, let's say Ollie Pope, Dom Sibley, Rory Burns all score runs, and they get brought back into the team. How would you see that? How would the public see that? Would they see that as saying, well, they're in form, they're playing, or they're thinking, they were part of our problem. Why are you bringing them back? Why aren't you going with this reset?
To be honest, I don't see an issue with that. If Rory Burns scores 1,000 runs in April, or scores 5 centuries in April or whatever, if he demands selection and he's playing well, stick him in. I mean, for Rory Burns, there was definite signs that he'd got something at Test level. He was an absolute pile of mess against Australia. His feet were all over the place. He was doing river dance, but there were good innings in Rory Burns' Test career too. So, if somebody like him did score a shed load of runs and say, "Look, I'm back," no problem with that at all. I think England are that desperate for runs at the moment. You'll take if Boris Johnson started scoring runs, then people would be happy for him to be in the team.
Oh, do you still play cricket, James?
I've got dodgy knees and a bad back, mate.
No, so no good to get a Test recall.
I could probably still do a job.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the way that the England batted against Westindies on that day 3, I think you might be right there, James. Having said that, we're out of time. We do have to let you go. We wish we could talk about this on more and more and more, but we will respect your time. So thank you for coming. England played West Indies. West Indies won that series 1-0, best of 3. 2 draws and 1 win. James, sorry once again, every time we come on, it seems to be negative. We can't give you a positive. So hopefully,
the thing that England always gives you as a Test match side is something to talk about.
Yeah. I think the saying is it's hope that kills you, or something along those lines.
Well, the hope disappeared with England a long time ago, mate.
Yeah.
Be a while before that's restored.
Absolutely. So hopefully, come June before the New Zealand Test, we'll get you on, and we can review that series. So James, thank you for coming to review the West Indies series. Really appreciate it,
Lucas. I mean, there's obviously over the next few weeks we'll be starting to find out who the new head coach, new director of cricket, and potentially a new captain is. So there's a lot to happen for England before that Test match against New Zealand in June. But hopefully they'll make the right decisions and they'll start treating red ball with the respect it deserves.
Absolutely agree with that. So everybody, thank you for watching. Make sure you follow James Butler on Twitter at the Cricket Badger. Try not to abuse him that much.
Abuse me if you want. Abuse me if you like.
He takes it all along. He's a fighter, James. He cops it all the time. Same as me. I cop it every day. Regarding Indian cricket and whatnot. My name is Lucas, aka 3 Point Spanish Kicking. Thank you for watching. James, thank you for coming on the show. See you, everybody.